Stephen King once wrote that nightmares exist outside of logic, and there's little fun to be had in explanations. They're antithetical to the poetry of fear. In a horror story, the victim keeps asking why, but there can be no explanation, and there shouldn't be one. The unanswered mystery is what stays with us the longest, and it's what we'll remember in the end.
Hey everybody, this is Jacob doing a video on Alan Wake 1 and 2, and this is going to be my recommendation for spooky season. And I kind of debated to do this video on Alan Wake for spooky season, just because how popular Alan Wake 2 is, but I'm sure there's still a lot of people debating to get the game or not, and maybe they're debating if they should play Alan Wake 1 before playing 2, and hopefully this video will answer some of those questions. And one thing I want to mention is the physical edition is coming out on October 22nd for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, and it's going to include Alan Wake Remastered and the DLCs for Alan Wake 2. But to my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in order to get access to the DLCs in Alan Wake Remastered, you're going to have to download it off the internet. But this isn't going to be a review, this is strictly a recommendation. And the reason why it's not going to be a review is because in this video, I'm not going to be going over every little thing I don't like about it, which there isn't a whole lot I don't like. But I am going to be showing off and talking about why I love Alan Wake and why I recommend it. The story is about Alan being a famous book writer, and then basically being forced by a supernatural identity to write himself into a whole book. Well, not really being forced to write himself into the book, but to permanently create a gateway so the darkness can get out of the dark place through Alan Wake's writing, which becomes reality. So then he has to write himself into the book to keep that from happening. But he can't do just whatever he wants. It has to make sense. It has to follow the script. And you'll find pages of the script in Alan Wake 1 and 2. And I'm gonna go ahead and shut up and let you guys listen to one of the pages of the script.
A man turned to face me. His face was covered in shadows. It was hard to make him out in the darkness of the forest that surrounded us. But the axe he lifted was plain to see. It glistened with the blood of his victim. He grinned madly. The shadows were alive, distorting his features. It was a scene from a nightmare, but I was awake.
I absolutely love that. It's almost like getting to listen to a book as you're playing the game. But one thing they definitely improved on in Alan Wake 2 when it comes to the manuscript pages, they actually help guide you and give you clues on what to do. But this game really does have a great story, from the writing and the voice acting in both Alan Wake 1 and 2. But if you don't normally play games for the story and you really just care about the gameplay, then you probably won't like Alan Wake 1 or 2 all that much, because the story is the strongest selling point. But not only, Alan Wake 2 does have some pretty good gameplay. Now let's talk about how scary Wake 1 and 2 is. After all, Halloween is the reason why I'm doing this whole video. And I'm going to use a scale factor of 1 through 10, just so you guys can kind of understand my scale factor. Let's say Resident Evil 4 being like a 2, and the Evil Within series being an 8, and Outlast being like a 10. And I'm sure most of you guys played 1 or 2 of those games, so you should kind of understand my scale factor. So the first Alan Wake being like a 3, and Alan Wake 2 being like a 6 or 7. And Alan Wake 2 is not the bloodiest or scariest game, but it definitely does keep you on your toes. And that's what makes it so scary when you're playing, because you never know what's going to happen. What makes Evil Within scarier than Alan Wake is the fact that it's psychological and it's really like bloody and grotesque. And Alan Wake is mainly psychological. And not saying Alan Wake doesn't get bloody and grotesque, because it does, but not like Evil Within. And that's why it only gets a 6 or a 7. And the only thing really scary about the first Alan Wake is the story, but when it comes to the gameplay, it's really not scary at all. But I want to go ahead and give some props to Alan Wake 1 and 2's graphics, but especially 2. It really does feel like a next-gen game, and this game really does put the PlayStation 5 to work. And not just the PlayStation 5, but PC too. And Alan Wake 2 is very much a survival horror game, but not every game that is a little scary is considered survival horror. Some people think it is, it's not. What makes the game survival horror is when you have limited resources, and you have to go out and scavenge and collect new resources, but at the same time trying to reserve the resources that you collect so you can survive. And that is what makes the game survival horror. And the first Alan Wake, although it does have survival elements, it's more of an action horror. And a perfect example of game being more action horror is Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6. And Resident Evil 4 does have some survival mechanics, with only having limited inventory and starting off with only a handgun and a few bullets. But pretty early on in the game, it focuses more on the action, with you having to worry about your inventory less and less, causing Resident Evil 4 to be more of an action game with the survival mechanics in the backseat. And the first Alan Wake has even less survival mechanics than Resident Evil 4. And I'm not saying Alan Wake is a bad game, just don't get the first Alan Wake expecting it to be a survival horror. And I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Alan Wake was being developed as an open world game. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the idea was to, at daytime, you were supposed to go out and scavenge and kind of collect things you needed. But then at night, you were supposed to go out and fight the darkness. But for whatever reason, they end up not doing that. But when you're playing the first Alan Wake, you can kind of tell that it was supposed to be an open world game. Which, although it sounds cool, but it's probably for the best. Because I don't know about everybody else, but I'm kind of picky about my open world games nowadays. Because a lot of them feel kind of empty and bland and repetitive. But when I found out Alan Wake was originally being developed as an open world game, I thought that was kind of cool, but I do think it's for the best. And another thing the game developers did a really good job at is keeping you on your toes, especially in the dark place. And this is what I mean keeping you on your toes. Because sometimes those are just shadows and they don't materialize. So you gotta take your time and make sure they're not gonna materialize and attack you. And that generally made me jump a little bit, mainly because I was caught off guard, and this game does have quite a bit of jump scares like that one. And one thing I want to mention in this video is I am playing on easy, and this is my second one through, which allowed me to carry over some of my equipment and weapons and upgrades from the last game. So the amount of bullets I have and how many shots it takes to kill isn't going to be the same on your first playthrough, even if you are playing on easy. I normally play my games on normal or hard, but I'm pretty much just replaying this game so I can do a video on it. Another thing that everybody needs to know about Alan Wake 2, it does have quite a bit of puzzles. And me, myself, I'm really picky about puzzles. I guess you can say I don't really like item-based puzzles. I feel like those are just a waste of time. I like the ones that make you think a little bit, and they kind of feel rewarding when you figure them out. But the ones that make you play fetch, I do not like. I just feel like they're a waste of time, which is somebody that's really busy. I don't like things that waste my time. But Alan Wake 2 does have some pretty interesting puzzles that require you to think a little bit. And when you do manage to figure them out, some of them do have good rewards. But the good news is if you don't like puzzles in general, most of the puzzles, if not all, are not required to progress through the story. Most of them are just loot and some perks. But I think that's pretty much gonna do it for this video, guys. And if you guys do like this video, consider liking and subscribing. And this is Jacob saying goodbye. None of this is official, but possibly getting an Alan Wake TV show and a Control movie. And the reason why I mentioned Control is because Alan Wake and Control are set in the same universe. But if Alan Wake done right, could be a great TV show. And it would have to be a great TV show. It couldn't just be okay. The fans that play Alan Wake love Alan Wake. So then it becomes kind of a double-edged sword. And the reason why that is because people that love the game are going to be a little bit harder on the show just because they want the show to be as good as the game. So if it's not as good, there's almost no point in making it. And if you change too much up and you do something stupid, you're going to piss off your fan base. And I don't know what it is about adaptations, but not only, but especially game adaptations, they always change something up that pisses off the fan base. And I'm just like, why change it? You already had greatness. And I'm not saying you should have to stick exactly to the game, but you need to stick to the characters and the world of Alan Wake, if we ever got a TV show of Alan Wake.
And these adaptations,